Hello, welcome to the Knife Yak channel. Today's topic is the Benchmade Griptillian. I recently got this drop point version of the Griptilian. It arrived yesterday. I'm not going to say much about the drop point version today because I want to do a separate video where I compare the sheep's foot version and the drop point version as a separate topic, and so I'm going to just kind of put this one aside and we'll deal with it later. So that leaves us with these two sheepfoot models. I have been an early adopter of the Benchmade Griptillian. If you look at this one, and if we look at it up close, I think you can see that it's marked on the blade there, first production. This is number 765 out of 100. No, sorry, 765 out of 1,000. So this is what they used to look like when the Griptilian first came out in, I believe, 2001 or thereabouts. They were made with 440C steel, and you can, let me get my focus up here a little bit. Yeah, this camera's not going to focus very well. But yeah, it's 440C stainless, and you can see that it had the oval shaped hole, which was heavily chamfered. In comparison, the newer production has a round hole, which is more squared and less chamfered, which makes it better, I think, so you can actually get your thumb to engage with it better. Another difference is the inner workings. So let's get a flashlight here, and you can see this. If you can see down inside there, let me switch hands. In the new production, it has I think bronze washers, and the old original version has, I really doubt you'll see this, but there's, I think, Teflon. They must be plastic or Teflon washers. So in that respect, the construction has improved, but in other respects, the construction is pretty much the same. It hasn't really changed. The handle's, as far as I can tell, identical. But let's put this one away. The point I wanted to make is that I've had these things for a long time. This is going back more than 20, almost a quarter of a century, and they're still making it, and it's still one of the more popular Benchmade knives. And it retails currently for $160. And that makes it probably Benchmade's least expensive knife, although it's by no means cheap. It is, I guess, their economy model. We'll do a few size comparisons here quickly. So there's the, let's line this. I'm going to put the pivot right on top of this, this 8-inch line on my mat here. And I'll put a Spyderco PM2 down here for size comparison, and you can see that they're in the same ballpark as far as blade length and handle length. Here's the Manix 2, which is again comparable. As you can see, the Manix blade is just a little bit shorter. And let's see what else we have here. Oh, this is the Spyderco Endella. This is the one that's between the Endura and the Delica, the middle-sized one, and it's pretty comparable. And the Benchmade Bug Out. The Bug Out is smaller, as you can see. Now my camera will show whichever knife is nearest the camera to be a little bit bigger due to the angle of the camera. But if you look at the lines on the mat, you can see how close they are to this line, even though it looks like it's kind of tapered inwards with the perspective a little skewed. But you can get the idea here, right? So the Benchmade, I should say the Griptilian has a thicker handle than other comparable size knives. If you compare it to the bug out, it's way thicker, right? And not only is the handle fairly thick, but it's also contoured, so you get kind of a rounded effect going kind of this way. It has a kind of a curved profile, which makes it feel good in the hand. It feels up your hand and doesn't feel at all boxy. It feels kind of rounded. The Griptilian is set up for tip up carry with, and that's tip up only, with ambidextrous positioning for the pocket clip. So it's got the holes on both sides. Let's talk about the blade. So as you can see, the blade grind is it's a flat saber grind. There's some good jimping up here. It's quite effective. You'll notice the tip, of course, is not very pointy, which it's going to be a pretty hot debate, I guess, as to whether or not this modified sheep's foot blade shape is better or worse than the pointier drop point version. I'm gonna do a review on the drop point version, and I'll let you know what I end up thinking. But this blade has a fair amount of thickness right up near the tip, so I think it is strong. And if I had to use this knife or the spine of this knife to pry the lid off of a paint can, I think this would be the one to do it with. But you don't get a whole lot of delicate. It's not a fine point that's going to be great for a lot of like up close precision piercing kind of cuts, but that's a compromise. I think it's very strong, right? I mentioned the jimping, which gives you a bit of a thumb ramp here that's quite effective. And referring to the handle now, you can see that there's jimping actually molded into the plastic here. The handle is made out of, they call it Grivery, but that's basically fiberglass reinforced nylon. And there's some jimping molded into the plastic handle here at the spine, near the, or I should say, just above the pivot. And we also get some jimping molded into the handle back here towards the pommel area, and more of that down here below as well, and underneath the index finger area. So this is a very secure knife in the hand, and you also get these little bumps, this textured stippling kind of an effect. It's stipple gripple, I guess, and that it makes it very secure, as I mentioned. It doesn't feel rough in the sense of like abrasive, but you can definitely feel it. It feels kind of like smooth gription, and it's kind of interesting the way it kind of gives you some smoothness, but at the same time some very pronounced grip, which I quite like. The lock is Benchmade's Axis lock. Most people are familiar with that by now, right? A very secure lockup. The spring is, there's two Omega springs down inside there, and they're fairly slight in terms of, it doesn't take a great deal of strength to activate the lock, and it does drop shut, so the action is quite smooth, and the lockup is very secure, so there's no problems, no worries there. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's down inside this handle, because this is mostly a plastic handle, but it's quite firm, and compared to the bug out, it doesn't have very much flex in the handle. And everybody who's ever watched YouTube has seen this before, but with a thinner handle and the thinner scales on the bug out, you can squeeze that quite a bit. You can compress that, and that bothers people who think the knife isn't very strong, although it's probably a lot stronger than people give it credit for. With the Griptilian, you can still squeeze it a little bit, but very minimal. It's thick, the plastic is thicker, and the reinforcement inside the handle is is more extended. So I'm going to show you if I can. If we look down inside there, you can see that the molded handle has some ribbing. So it's basically hollow scales, but there's a very pronounced kind of a ridge. There's ridges inside there that give it more stability, I think. But you can also see that there's actually a fairly extensive metal liner. There's steel liners in there which are designed to reinforce the area where the lock mechanism is. You get a metal liner that goes all the way back here, almost to here on the handle. So let me get close and just kind of shine the light in there, and maybe you can see about where that is. And there's also a metal post down inside there that you can probably see right about. It goes right to there. There's a metal post that kind of holds everything together, and that metal, the double metal liners extend past that post. So you get metal all the way back almost to here. And so that is by no means a weak, flimsy knife. It feels light and plasticky because that's what you feel in your hand, but there's metal inside there, and it's not a trivial amount of metal. And this thing is strong, and I don't worry at all about the strength and durability of this handle. I think it's quite good. So the shape of the handle is awesome. It's kind of a neutral handle shape, but it flares out here to give you a lot of purchase. So, and there's not a whole lot of peaks and indentations and grooves and things to force your hand around, but it just fits in your hand, and it's kind of shaped like, if you hold your hand like this and just look at the shape of the inside of your hand, it just looks like that was kind of made to fit in there, right? I like this ramp where the thumb goes, and I like the way this thing doesn't slide around in the hand. It works great. It transitions easily into a reverse grip, and it feels great that way as well. And so yeah, handle is awesome. It's one of the best things about this knife, I think, is the handle. There is a lanyard hole, which is down quite far, and this lanyard hole is quite small. In fact, I have here a piece of parachute cord, and I want to show you. You can get, it will fit paracord, 550 paracord will fit into that hole, but if you have burned or melted or fused the end of the paracord to avoid fraying, that little knob on the end of the paracord makes it so you can't get it through the hole. So that hole is barely big enough to accept the paracord if you can get it through there without that knob in such a way that it won't fray, right? So for this, if you're going to use a lanyard for this, I would strongly recommend the 275 cord, which is much thinner, and you can in fact get a double strand through there. If you fold it tight and just kind of twist it, it will go through, right? Now the good news is you really don't need a lanyard on this knife, because the grip and the clip position, which is not, this is not a deep carry pocket clip, but it gives you something to grab hold of. And so when you carry this in your clip to your pocket, it gives you plenty to grab hold of. So if I were carrying this in my pocket, I would not bother with a lanyard at all. One of the things I've found interesting about the clip as it relates to the handle, I've talked in other videos about the clip grip interface. So we have this kind of a contour, rounded shape of the handle in terms of the handle profile. And when you take into account also these little stipple bumps or stipple gripples, there's actually not very much contact at all between the point where the clip touches the handle and the metal. It actually is barely touching anything at all. If you look at the, let's look at the roundness of the handle here underneath the clip, and we'll turn it just a little bit and maybe tilt it that way. You can see that the clip is actually barely floating above the handle, and there is just like one little gripple stipple holding that clip up off of the handle. And let's see if I turn it around this way, and you can see, there you go. When you look at that, it's like most of the clip isn't even touching that. It's just kind of floating there, but it is touching. There's like a little bump under the, there's like one little pointy bump that's holding that up. So what that means is you can get this in and out of your pocket real easily with minimal friction. You do get friction because the cloth of your pants pocket will hold this up until you get more contact, but it slides right out. You don't get any sort of a ripping or tearing or grinding effect. Even though the texture is fairly prominent, it doesn't have any aggressive pocket ripping tendency, which I quite like. It carries very well in the pocket. So this knife will carry very well in the pocket, but I personally prefer to carry it in a pouch. So I've mentioned in other videos that I am a pretty big fan of the Benchmade soft sheath, right? And the knife would go in clip side towards my body like that. And this goes down into the pouch quite far. And so you'll have a little bit of space up at the top, quite a bit of space actually up at the top, where the, so it'll kind of move around in there a little bit. So when I carry this, I have a couple of, I will fold up a couple of 3-inch gun cleaning patches. So this one has the wad down in there, and so it makes it ride quite a bit higher. And so that's better, gives you more to grab, and it just feels like it's just not slopping around in there as much. So that's how I carry it. The Griptilian scores very highly in the carryability category. The knife deploys very easily. With the axis lock and a fairly heavy blade, you can easily do the inertial gravity shake open deployment, which I've demonstrated in other videos. It's going to be hard for me to do this here with the camera mounted the way it is and the table right here. So maybe if I turn my camera around, I can show you how this works. But yeah, you just hold the knife like that and just shake it like that, and the blade will come out, and then you shake it open like that, right? So it's very easy to deploy, very secure, and yeah, you don't need, if people want to argue about which is better, the thumb studs or the hole, it might not matter at all, because you don't really need either. You just shake the knife open like that and it works great. But the knife also deploys very well using the hole. We can do the thumb, you can flick it open with your thumb, right? You can flick it open with your index finger or the middle finger, reverse flick on the other side. That works great. Right-handed, left-handed, makes no difference at all. So that's all good, right? I love the deployment. So summary and conclusion, this knife checks all the boxes pretty much, right? It's a youthful size. It feels good in my hand. It's carryable. It doesn't tear up the pocket. It's easy to deploy, and quality. There's nothing at all wrong with this knife as far as I can tell. I like I just love the presentation. This is a no-nonsense knife. It doesn't look fancy. It doesn't have any unnecessary frills. And with this particular blade configuration, it also doesn't look terribly threatening. If you're just using this knife in any number of peaceful ways, and people aren't going to look at that and think, oh, that guy's got a really nasty looking weapon, right? It looks like a tool, and it looks like the kind of knife that a person would use to do honest, hard, everyday jobs, right? But today I just wanted to just talk about my impressions of the knife and why I like it and why you might as well. So as I mentioned, I will probably do a my next video with a direct comparison between the sheep's foot versus the drop point configuration. So check in later for that. Thanks for watching.